Now it's time for us to be informed by experts that we must benefit. Beneficiation of our material before it's taken out. And if we're taking out without being benefited, it's got to be our decision. There's nothing wrong if we have decided to take whatever material out without benefiting it, because we have made that decision. But in the past, we didn't make that decision. Now, the whole entire continent is free. We were the last country in the whole continent to be free. Now, the whole continent is free, and this xenophobic nonsense needs to stop. Let us be one continent, one person, one country. Let us work together. This country can look after, if we work together and we combine our resources with Nigeria, Zimbabwe, where there's a lot of wealth. And I'm so pleased. This morning I was hearing that the president of Zimbabwe, he has actually brought the issue of corruption, investigation, and making sure that it's monitored within his office. So you can see that the countries in Africa are really serious about corruption. We want to build the economy. My brother, Mr. Winfred Oppong-Amoako, please advise us. We want to go to Africa, we want to go to Ghana, Nigeria, and go and make money there and empower our brothers and sisters. If we want to stop many people come here, let's go and build countries, and they will stay in their countries. And it's a positive way of building our country than to be xenophobic when they're here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And we're looking forward for a very interesting discussion going forward. Thank you.
I think indeed, Joseph, it will be, because our guest today, Winfred Oppong-Amoako, is indeed a specialist in the African continent. I'm not going to give you a whole CV here, Winfred, but it looks like you've been living, studying, working in about 40 countries, mostly Africa. Now, your surname is a giveaway, probably from West Africa somewhere. You can tell us a bit about that too. But yeah, sort of over 20 years experience in linking countries across the continent. So thank you very much, Joseph, for that introduction, because I think that sets the tone. It's not only a case of following opportunities, but it's also a case of creating the future for the continent that the potential is there for. So we are business advisors. We are mentors and coaches and consultants, and in different forms we are supporting entrepreneurs that are people that are in fact those that will be successfully crossing borders, crossing regions and trading in the continent, where I know that Winfred, you have developed some really important insights. So let's jump into the topic. Winfred, if I can introduce you in this way. You also author of a book, Upgrade to Africa Business Class, Why You Should Expand Your Business into Africa. So it's not only about the inter-country trade, it's also about the trends in the continent, why the continent itself is such an attractive opportunity for business. So is that a fair introduction, Winfred?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is.
So just to get that out of the way, if people are wondering, you are working in various African countries and linking people in terms of business opportunities.
Yes, yes. So
can you tell us about?
Okay. So I was born in Ghana, so that your giveaway was was right. I was born in Ghana. I grew up in Ghana, and around primary school, you know, when I needed extra money to buy some stuff in school, I told my mom, hey, I want to sell some ice creams. So my mom said, "What? You're supposed to be studying." I said, "No, I need extra cash to do things." So my mom bought me all the ingredients to make an ice cream. And those days, there was an ice cream van, but it will come like once a week. So I saw a gap in the market, and you know, as business advisors, we must always see a gap in the market. So my journey as an entrepreneur started very long ago. And then I did some studies in Ghana, did some studies in the UK and the US, and I've been on the continent now. I've been in South Africa for close to 12 years now, and I've worked in the continent. I've traveled in the continent, and I've come into contact with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs and existing entrepreneurs who also want to take their business across the continent. So for me, that was where I also saw again the gap in the market. And I say, no, how can we support each other? How can we bring information across that will make it easier? Because we always see foreign businesses and investors coming to Africa, but for those of us in the continent, we don't cross promote each other. So I saw a gap in the market, and that led to the authorship of my book. Yeah. So I'm currently working on the second edition with a publisher, and yeah, I hope we'll have a good journey together.
Yeah, so I understand that the book is sold out, so it's not possible to get a copy of that right now.
Yes, and we also pull the rest of the imprint because we wanted to make room for the promotion of the upcoming one. Yeah.
Okay. So I asked you just now what the essential message of the book is. But I just want to mention that one lucky person, in fact, not a lucky person, an attendee that posts a pointed question today will have the opportunity to win a copy of the new edition of Winfred's book. You will have to be patient for a while because the publishing date is still in the future. We can't hand or send you the copy straight away, but it will be noted and you'll receive that copy. One person who has got the most pointed question or interesting question that you post. So by the way, remember to open the Q&A window to post your questions. And I'm sure they're long. In fact, I already see in the chat area some questions emerging. So let's take those questions into the Q&A that we make sure that we address them as we go along. Please don't be afraid of posting any kind of question. This is a fairly new area for most of us as business advisors. So I'm also very much looking forward to learning from you in terms of your insight. So let's start off with where you are with your book, and then we maybe can move on to asking a question about, are we as business advisors here in South Africa qualified to be supporting our clients in expanding into other countries?
Okay. So in the book, what I try to address is what are the trends, which countries are really, coming up to the surface in terms of economic growth. What are the industries, the sectors that are viable for investment, but also for doing business in those countries and sectors. Then I also pick few countries that I think, in terms of security, in terms of giving customers for a product, in terms of stability of the economy. I've picked those countries to bring it up to the front, so that at least those who are beginners into the African market will at least have something to start off with. Yeah, so I've addressed a lot of things. I've also addressed the Chinese influence and whether or not China is an ally, or is really heading the businesses in Africa. And I've really addressed quite a number of issues there.
Yeah. So are we familiar enough as business advisors with those issues? Sort of if we are thinking of advising our clients in terms of African markets, I think we tend to kind of think, but the trans-border trade, the expansion into other African countries, from a South African perspective specifically, but maybe from other countries too, is kind of best left to the multinationals, the big guys. Are we qualified to advise our clients, and are our clients then able to go and make good opportunities in other countries?
Definitely. You see, as long as you are from the continent, you live on the continent, you have an experience in terms of business. I don't advise people who just came out of business schools to be business advisors. You need to have the experience. You know, first of all, for starters, you should at least own a business, or you maybe in the past you've managed a business, you know, at an executive level. At least you have an experience in terms of growing a business, because you can't advise somebody who remember they're going to take all their stake and go into one country, and you know you can't go there with a wishy-washy kind of strategy. So that's one. Two, you should at least have an idea. You should have knowledge and experience of how to analyze a company's product or service. Before you take somebody into another country, before you advise a client to expand their business into another country, you should be able to analyze where they are in terms of their product and services. You know, you should you know, check to see whether they're even ready for the African market. Also check to see whether the product and services and strategies are culturally adaptable into other African countries. So that's also one. And then you should ask yourself, you know, am I registered as a company? I'm talking in terms of the business advisor. Are you registered as a company, or if you're a consultant, are you registered? Do you have all your compliance documents in place? When I started off advising companies to you know, move their businesses across the continent, one of the challenges that I came across was, you as a business advisor, when you move somebody across into the other part of the continent, you should yourself have compliance documents. That's very, very important. And then you can't say
Can
that.
I interrupt you there just for a moment?
Yeah.
That may be an important point. So we're talking about business advisors being ready to leap into the space of supporting their clients, their small business clients, to start trading across borders. So what you said, so if I hear you right, you're saying there's a lot of stuff, or there's specific things rather, that we as business advisors must make sure we have in place in terms of our own businesses before we venture into that, so that we move from the right position there. And there are compliance issues. I heard you say. Can you just explain? So very practically, you know, sort of if I'm advising, let's say, by the way, I see that Rejoice is talking about fast-moving consumables. Okay, so she's in the fast-moving consumables business. I want to, as a business advisor, support my client that's in fast-movable consumables. I first need to make sure that I have my house in order. And what are practical are those things?
Okay, so for instance, you should make sure that you have your tax clearance certificate. You should make sure that you registered with a professional body. You should make sure that if you are in the fast-moving consumables, you have to make sure that you have the right documentations to be able to give advice on those. Now I'm talking about the business advisor.
Yes.
Yeah. So you should have at least some sort of certification. It's very, very important, because when you go into one of, and I think we're going to touch on it, when you go into one of the embassies to get your documents certified, they will ask for certification. So that's very important.
So that would be as a IBASA member, I'm certified.
Yes, that would be one of,
or principal. Any of those gradings would be sufficient. So you take your IBASA membership certificate along as proof of that.
Yeah, that would be one of them. Yeah.
And then industry specific. So if you are, we know we talk about a vast different. Do you need some expertise, proven expertise in the specific industry?
Okay, so yeah, it's also very important because you can't advise somebody to go into mining in let's say in Ghana or in Zambia when you yourself you have no clue about mining. What you can do though is to connect them to companies on the ground in those countries to facilitate. So in that case, you just be another person. But in terms of advising businesses to go across, you should at least have a bit of knowledge about it, read about it, so that you can give informed, advice. Yeah. Yeah. I also put, I think we in terms of moving your, advising. Now we're talking about, am I qualified?
Yes.
You should also have.
So if I'm a business advisor that registered with IBASA, I'm qualified, and embassies would take me as a professional. They'll accept me. I'm a professional to offer services for going into their countries.
Yes, you are qualified in that sense, but also on top of that, you should also have some skills to make you a qualified person to advise. And we talked about having knowledge about the product. Another one is you should be able to have networks in those countries, because if you don't have, if you're going to start from zero, it's going to be quite tough for you. So you should at least have people in those countries, connect with companies on the ground, connect with individuals on the ground, connect with business advisors on the ground. And then the other one is you should at least have traveled to one Africa country, one other Africa country, because you can't. You see, now you're going to compare. So if you don't have any background knowledge of what the economy is, what consumers are, the informal sector in those countries, how can you advise somebody because you don't have anything to base it on? Yeah, so those would be at least some studies. Yeah,
and in your experience, Winfred, when someone starts out as a business advisor and you want to reach out into, let's say you choose specific countries that you have clients that you think may be able to trade in those countries, what tips would you give them in terms of that reaching out to the local networks?
Okay, so first of all, we talked about network. Now, if you don't have networks in those countries, what you do is you do a bit of research, and then you make some phone calls, or you send some emails, or you travel into the country, and then you talk to a few locals, and you find out who are the players, and then you connect with them. Another way of starting that journey is going to the local embassy in South Africa if you are based here. Let's say if you advising somebody to send their business to Zambia, you go to the Zambian embassy in South Africa, and then you ask for some information about investing in those countries or doing business in those countries. Another one would be going to the investment websites of those countries to read more about doing business in those countries. And then the other one is contacting somebody who is also a business advisor, but has gone ahead of you to get some insight.
Okay, so we are in fact the Institute of Business Advisors for Southern Africa. So there are some members amongst ourselves that are not South African. And I know most of us on the webinar today are South African, so that is the perspective that most of us will have. But we can start look amongst ourselves, of course. Are you aware, are there any other associations or professional bodies or places that consultants and business advisors in African countries are accessible through?
Yeah, there are quite a number of, almost all the countries have business chambers. And I think it's a great way to start. In terms of business advisors, I think IBASA is well ahead of the rest of Africa in terms of, pulling together business advice. But In terms of business chambers, you find that in most of the countries. So that would be a good start.
Good. So let me just remind people on the webinar, if you have a question, to actually post it under the Q&A. So I see there, Karikai, that you have a very potent question there about young people and about Chinese-African relations and so on. So it will be scrolling up the chat very soon and may miss it as a question. So if I can just ask that if you have a question, there I see some more questions coming through on the Q&A. So please post it there. And the second half of the webinar, we will be addressing those questions. And remember, the most potent question will be one that wins the book in the end. So there's a little kind of incentive too. Thank you very much, Winfred, for donating a copy of your book. I'm certainly looking forward to read that when the second edition comes out soon. So yeah, please keep posting. I see Jasmine is quoting us. She's actually Nigerian and watching from Nigeria. So whoever is looking for entry into Nigeria, there's already one business advisor here on the webinar today who you can connect with. So make yourself known on chat, and you can connect with Jasmine if Nigeria is a territory that you've been targeting. So, by the way, when we started off the webinar, we asked that participants please share where you're from and what your focus is. So maybe you can use that space today very productively in terms of networking. Which areas are you considering entering, perhaps, if you are? And what industries are you in? You know, so those are important questions, as opposed to just in terms of people linking up with each other through the chat. So, Winfred, if I can come back to you. That is kind of us as business advisors and orientating ourselves. Now, what commitments do we need from our clients when we start a discussion with them? You know, sort of what should we be asking them? What should we be looking out for them? Where are we going to go wrong when we engage our clients in terms of going into other countries? Of course, we're professionals, so we should be able to guide them so that they don't make the mistakes. So what is it that we need to look out for in terms of our small business clients when we start work with them in entering this field?
Commitment is very, very important. I'll start with what you shouldn't do. So one mistake you shouldn't do is to guarantee a client or a business a partnership or a successful outcome. So I think some of us will argue, then you shouldn't even try. No, what I'm saying is don't guarantee 100%, because whatever the success is going to also depend on them. You know, it will depend on the suitability of the product or service. It will depend on a loyal partner or clients on the ground. You know, and it will also be determined by a conducive business environment, a stable economy, you know, a stable inflation, a stable political environment. So these are factors that you have no control over, and so it's very important that you don't overcommit yourself. Now, what you can promise them is to try and get them to sign a contract to start with. Now, in terms of you know, what commitments your clients should also bring to the table, one of the top ones will be they must commit to a long-term entrance into the market. Some businesses, what they do is they just want to go in and make money. No, it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to have a long-term strategy, a long-term commitment, because it will take you an average of a year to really settle in the country, you know, to build a good customer base, and then from there you can, you know, penetrate the market. So you have to have a long-term strategy, and you have to have a cutting-edge product or service. Your product has to be competitive, of a high quality, because it's going to compete with others, but it has to be affordable, because you're competing with the likes of China that bring mass production on the continent, and then it has to be culturally appropriate. Another commitment that your client should have.
Can I interrupt you? Sorry to interrupt you, but I saw one of the questions. I'm just looking who asked it. I can't see straight out. Asked about cultural context, and you mentioned that now. So, can you perhaps just elaborate on that a bit more? You know, sort of what is entailed in being culturally sensitive, and what are the kind of mistakes that we can possibly make that we need to look out for in allowing for cultural differences?
So let's say, first of all, the language. Now, when you some businesses, and I've come across few of them, what they do is when they're moving from an English-speaking country to a French country, they forget to change the labels, and so the product go and people have no clue what it's about, except a few that can speak English. So that's just a common example. The other one is when you go into a market, it's very important to get an expert in the country to advise you on which common language, which trade language in the country to choose, because you might choose a tribal language that is not it's not advisable to choose. Maybe that tribe is seen as a bully in the country, and when you go for when you go for their language, you might not get people to patronize your product. The other one is the choice of languages. You know, you have to choose languages for your marketing campaign that are sensitive to the different cultures. You can't. Well, sometimes one language in one tribe can be offensive in another tribe. So these are common things that you should be very, very much aware of.
Yeah, definitely. So Daphne, I hope was Daphne that asked the question. I hope that offers you some insights there in terms of cultural diversity and allowing for that. But sorry, I interrupted you in the process of talking the commitment that you want from your client and how you know, sort of that contractual relationship and preparing so that you don't waste your client's money and time and they don't do the same with you. And of course, you're building, as a business advisor, you're building your reputation too. So especially one is stepping into this space as a new area of income for your own business too.
Yeah. So let me use an example of a client that I'm helping at the moment. So this client came to me for help to go into the African market, and they were going to expand their franchise into the African market. Now, they didn't have all their documents in place. Remember, we talked about the advisor having your documents in place. Now, I had my documents in place because I've done it for others, but they didn't have all their documents in place. So it took us, now it's taken us about 8 months to get all their documents in place. You see, so that can slow you down. So for the client to really have success, they must make sure that they have all their documents in place. Some of them they've been in business, but they don't even have tax certificates. I mean, you must clean up those ones, and then they must be willing to make modifications to their products and services. Some of them, they come and they are set in stone. When you advise them to make modifications, they fight with you. But you can't go to another market with the same product that is working in one market. Remember, the African market is very dynamic, and what will work for one particular culture or people group in South Africa might not work for another people group in, say, Nigeria. So you have to make sure that you make your clients who understand that they have to be flexible in terms of modifying their product or service to be culturally sensitive. And then they have to be ready to spend some money to make that happen. It's very, very important. Some of them, they come and they just give you a small budget and they want that budget to work throughout. No, they must set a good budget for you to work with.
Can you give? I know budget is always as long as a piece of string, sort of. But if you say a good budget, is there kind of a minimum level of commitment? Let's say there's a business that's got one product, so they've got a FMGs, some goods that they want to sell in shops, and they want to move to, let's say, 2 or 3 other countries. Is there a limit or a limit above which it doesn't make sense at all for a business to start into this?
Okay, maybe I can just use an example of one of the clients that I work with. So they wanted us to look at their business strategy, their marketing strategy, and just looking at that, we charged them over 60,000 rands. Now that gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. Now, in terms of the small businesses that want to expand, I guess you can make some concession that you can try and help them out. But in terms of the big companies, then you should be able to set a good budget, because you see, what you want is to enter into the market with confidence, to make sure that you've tackled all these culturally sensitive issues. So it's very important that you do everything right before you start a journey. Yeah, so for me, that's one of the ways to do that. And then respect and integrity is very, very important, because Africa, as we know, is all about relationships. So if you don't have respect for each other, and I'll set an example. One of my clients was supposed to go and get their documents certified in the embassies of the countries they were going to go to. And in one of the embassies, they went there with an attitude, right? And because of that, the consulate, the high commissioner, refused to sign their document. So this is very important. If you need to bite your teeth to get the job done, it's very important that you are respectful, but also you have integrity. Remember, whatever you do here will be shared across with other members of the government. So it's very important that you work integrity and respect.
Yeah. So rather check it out before you jump into it, so that you're ready, as opposed to sound advice. There are a lot of questions being posted about regions and which countries are more suitable than others, which are more accessible than others, what kind of industries or products. Also, maybe we'll get to that just now. But before we do, I just opened another poll there to ask people on the webinar today, as business advisors, you are considering entering African countries. How many of your clients may consider expanding into other African countries? Just to get a sense of what kind of size of client base you may have. And I see there is a good third that says it's less than 1, which is fairly limited, so it may just be exploratory. But then good 17% and 3 to 5, and some just 2 or so that have more than 10. But it looks like it sits mostly in the category of 1 to 3, and then less, one or less. So it is really a new field for us, and something perhaps that we as IBASA can take forward, and not only in terms of the topic of this webinar today, but as something, some value that we can create for our members in the future. So if you do have ideas on how IBASA can do that, please share that in the chat. By the way, we record chat and have a look at it after the webinar to make sure if there are any issues to follow through, that we may do so. So if there are suggestions in terms of how IBASA as a professional body that supports its members can go about in making it easier for you as a business advisor to follow through on the opportunities that we speak about here today, then please do so in the chat area. And I see Lesego has joined us and Carl's in the room too. So they diligently looking at the questions and the chat to follow through with us. So Lesego and Karel, by the way, can you just go through the questions and each identify one or two, or combine some of the questions, and who asked the questions to, so that we can move on to some answering some questions today. But let's come back to you, Winfred, before we close the webinar. Let's close the webinar, the poll, excuse me. So that's clear what the trend is here. It's a really early stage for us as business advisors in entering the space. So maybe when we do our follow-up webinar in 6 months, Winfred, those figures will shift towards more clients being served by our business advisors. So the question was around countries, regions, industries that are more suitable than others.
Yeah, that's quite tricky because it depends on the type of product or service that you're taking across. But I'll just give some few examples of what I know of. So in Southern Africa, now talking about regions, sub-regions. In Southern Africa, you have to look at the manufacturing sector, real estate, call centers. It's very big in some countries. The digital healthcare, it's also quite big. It's really coming up. And then game farms, which is common, mining. East Africa, you're looking at technology, specifically mobile money. It's really a growing sector that people can really make money in. And then technology-powered urban transport is very, very needed across the continent. So why am I saying technology-powered urban transport? Public transport that has Wi-Fi built in it, public transport that gives you access to to do even send emails or do business on board. These are quite growing trends that one can make money in. Then still in East Africa, residential estates is also big. There are a lot of expats, so it's a growing market. And then guest houses for tourists, and then tour operators, office buildings is also coming up. There are a lot of small businesses that are coming up, and they need a place there where they can go and access the internet. They can go and print their documents and stuff. So office buildings. And then West Africa, you're looking at infrastructure development. Building roads, bridges. Also, accommodation for students is also quite big in West Africa. Agro processing is also a big area that need. There are a lot of plants that when it comes to the harvest time, most of the countries in West Africa don't have the capacities to turn them into a finished product. So some of these products, when they are harvested, they get rotten. So that agro processing is quite big. Fashion is also a growing trend in West Africa. Logistics is much needed in West Africa. Malls, if you are a big investor, I'll say go for malls. It's quite big. And then the mining products, not mining itself, but mining is gradually being taken over by governments, by big corporations. So go into the products for mining, the chemicals, the gears, the safety wares, go for that. And then smart farming, greenhouses is also big. Hydroponics is also quite big. And then poultry farming. And then when you come to Central Africa, mining products as well, going to that, it's quite big. It's a huge, especially in DRC, Congo, Brazzaville, and other Central Africa countries. Mining is quite big. And then supermarkets, it's much needed in Central Africa. I've traveled quite a bit there, and you have one or two spotted malls or supermarkets that are built by the Chinese, but you don't have, like what we have in South Africa in other Africa countries. So supermarket is quite big there. And hotels is also big there. And then mobile phones and accessories. People in Central Africa, they use mobile phones like you don't know. So you can make money there. Yeah, so those are the broad strokes.
It would be any business that is in that value chain of industries that and areas that you mentioned now.
Sorry?
So typically our client base as business advisors may be smaller businesses, and they would be focusing on a specific segment or a specific component in that value chain of, let's say, communications. You mentioned cell phones and so on. So obviously it's not the service providers, big cell phone companies. It's somewhere in the value chain. So if I hear you right, any element in that would be something to pursue in all of those industries you mentioned?
Yeah, so yes. So let's say we take cell phones, right? You can provide batteries for cell phones, covers for cell phones, fancy covers, those smaller ones that the big networks don't provide. For instance, sometimes I consulted in Congo, Brazzaville, and when I walk into the mobile shops, what I see is, you see, for instance, MTN, they when you go into their shops, they have one or two covers. But then you go into mobile shops where it's run by our Indian brothers and Lebanese brothers. You get more accessories there, and people are queuing. They're making money. So if you are somebody who wants to be the supplier of that, you really make a lot of money in that aspect.
Yeah. Great stuff. So there's much more to say, and I must say I got a glimpse of what you say in your book through an interview you did, and where you speak about the market, the African market expanding, and perhaps that's something we should say for the book. But let's ask the other people in the room, Joseph, Lesego, Carl, if you can switch on cameras. And if you can each select you may not be able to get all the questions. In fact, we are running out of time. So, Winfred, with your permission, can we run over the hour a bit? Would that be okay?
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so if Joseph, Lesego, and Carl, who are in the room, if you can maybe just look at the QA panel there and see there's some questions. I'm not sure who wants to go first. Maybe Joseph, if there's something that caught your eye in terms of a question that we need to address. You must unmute, remember.
Sorry, I'll go first. I remember now. Thank you. May I take this opportunity to thank our members who have joined this webinar coming from outside RSA. Those who are saying that we should indeed be working together with DTI and also countries, neighboring countries, in fact, with all the countries in the continent, trying to have business advisors in those countries. This will make the work for our business advisors here who will be advising their business to connect them with their colleagues in other countries. That is one of the things that already, this is now the first step that we are doing. And for an example, for those who are in Nigeria, already we do have a member there, and she's willing to accommodate to start dealing with members in this country. Her name is Yasmin Jem. She is our member. She's based in Nigeria. So for any of our member who wants to do anything in Nigeria, she's going to be setting it up for us there, for our members to be able to start immediately to connect with Nigeria. And in other countries like Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Kenya, even Ghana and Uganda, we do have members in the country coming from those countries. We are asking them to connect with us so that they can give us contacts and that we can connect with their countries. And also Zambia, we've got about 4 who are serving in our committees coming from Zambia, and they speak the language, they know the area very well. So we are indeed IBASA. It's one of the things that we are doing to connect the entire continent, to make it one and make it strong in the whole globe. Thank you.
I was muted there for a moment. I also know that in the shifts that we do on our website, we will create opportunities space for us to be sharing this kind of information amongst ourselves. So I saw Yasmin asking a really pertinent question around corruption. So Joseph, while you mentioned her name, how do we deal with corruption as a challenge, Winfred?
That's a very hot topic. I think it was February. I was giving a lecture to Vodacom executives, and this issue of corruption came out. It's a very touchy subject, and I wouldn't advise business advisors to get in the midst of corruption, because it will always come back to haunt you. What you should do is make sure that you get all these documents in place. Make sure that you get everything they're asking for. Because the moment you give money to somebody to do you a favor, that's it. You can't go back. So it's very important that you don't touch that. Don't go to that. That's a very dangerous area to go to. We've seen, we've heard, even in South Africa, some of the big names, corporates that are now going down, their brands are going down because of that. You don't want to get your brand crashed before you even start in those countries. So don't go into those areas. There are consultants on the ground that you can use in terms of services, and they have connections in the different countries. They know the different government officials. They work with the departments. They have a relationship. Consult them, pay some money, let them do, let them help you with all the documentation. But do not go into a government department and pay money to get, no. You shouldn't even go there.
Thanks for that. I've invited John and Steve, who's put their hands. I know Steve's organizing an event in Cape Town later this week, so I hope he can come to the call a bit later on and talk about it. I see Jonathan has since disappeared, so let's just remove him for now. But the rest of us are still here. So, Lesego, if I can come to you in terms of what caught your eye in terms of the question.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited about Africa, simply because of the great opportunities that are out there. What's caught my eye, 2 things. The initiatives that are available in South Africa from the Department of Trade and Industry. One of our members, Siva, mentioned it, as well as Thomas Jacobs, one of the CEDA business advisors in the Western Cape, also mentioned in the chat that the CEDA, that's Small Enterprise Development Agency, also has a program for export readiness. So I believe it's the duty of business advisors to be informed. So the Department of Trade and Industry, it's got platforms. Go out there, find out what's going on if you're interested in going in that space. But most importantly, I loved the fact that Winfred mentioned embassies. Many people don't understand the importance of international relations and the support you have as a citizen when you want to enter into a foreign country. And the most safest, well, I wouldn't say safest, it is one of the most reliable points of information is your embassy. So if you go to an embassy in a country, if you're South African, you go to the South African embassy, that's the first point to check if you're interested in being an investor. I know that the South African government is looking for South Africans who are willing to go out there and invest and bring in business. So definitely take up that opportunity as part of your research to find out what embassies are available. Pretoria has one of the largest embassies available globally. So if you did not know, your country, South Africa, has got the largest, it is one of the countries with the largest numbers of embassies in the whole world. We are competing with France, Russia, Germany, name it, we have them here. So if you want to know about a country, you can simply come to Pretoria, look for the embassy, find out how they make appointments. You can begin your research. The internet has made it so easy for people to go online and also research. So I believe information is key and being patient. As you know, Africa, infrastructure is not the best in some countries, but it does not mean an opportunity does not exist. And you have to be clever as well. Not every opportunity is an opportunity, so you must do your due diligence. To be upset when a business deal goes wrong because this is Africa is the wrong attitude. So the right attitude, the right information will bring you money, but you must be patient. I am excited to say our organization is one of the few organizations that offer the critical skills letter from the Department of Home Affairs. So our own members come from countries outside of South Africa, and this provides an opportunity for our members to network with people who have gone through the visa process and to some level of assurance that they've gone through a process with us as well. So this is our year. We're launching regions. We're encouraging our members to network. So do come, do participate. That is my comment on that.
Only by participating we'll be finding the connections that we need. So this is really this is not a job for a single person, sort of.
Not at all.
Winfred, Sego mentioned the CEDA, the DTI, and so on. Are those institutions places to look to business advisors for help?
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of even associations, let's say associations of manufacturing companies, there are a lot of associations that they can even get information, because inside those associations, you have individuals who've taken their business across, and they can actually walk the journey with you. So yeah, she's very much right. Yeah.
Any specific programs that you would like to highlight?
In terms of?
The DTI, CEDA, or any of the government support that, from South Africa's perspective, that business advisors can get when they want to support their clients going abroad?
Yeah, I think the Department of Business, I don't know how, I think it will be small business, but inside there you have investment departments, and they look at investment across, from the country going out, outgoing investments. So those are the ones that you can really start off with. Yeah, even within the government, within the Department of Finance and Enterprise, there should be investment departments that you can really make use of. Yeah,
indeed, there are programs like that. So, Carl, if we can come to you in highlighting a question or two. So I did try to inject two of our attendees to share what they, because they've put up their hands, but then they both disappeared. So sorry, we couldn't do that today. We also must remember to identify who had the most pointed question. Carl, if I can come back to you, what caught your eye in terms of the chat and questions? I'm sure we might to address all the questions here today, but sort of which important ones that you noticed?
Yeah, I think on the question panel, there are two open questions. The one is more comment from Daphne Matloa, just commenting the need for being well-traveled and knowing and understanding foreign markets before you start to give advice about them. If you're not been there, don't be clever about it. But then Sabine Musinde says, I totally agree with you that business advisors stay out of corruption, but business is done on premises of country-specific legislations. And then he asks, how can business navigate the complexity of the legislation, more especially when it comes selected and inconsistent law application? even lack of document and legislation altogether. So yeah, that dealing with local legislation that might put you in a compromising situation.
So what are the ways for business advisors to get insights into the legal framework of countries they wish to enter?
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question, and navigating those complexities is also very key. It's actually a start of the success journey. We talked about embassies, local embassies in your countries. Those are the contact points to start gathering those informations. Now, if you need a list of legal documents that you need to get in place, those are the places you should go, because they will give you the documents, the list of documents, and once you put them together, you take it back to them to get the originals certified for you, so that you don't take your originals to the country where you're taking your business to. Yeah. And I think it's time we make use of embassies in our countries.
Yeah. I'm going to save Molefe's Pue's question the last. He's asking, do you have any success stories to share regarding partnerships or businesses in South Africa that have made into other parts of Africa through your services or others? So just think about that for a moment. And if I can ask Joseph and Leslie, if you guys can come back to the call. We are over the hour now already. So that we can start to wrap up our discussion here today. So my apology for those that did not, whose specific answer questions we did not get to. Although I'm paging through the questions now, and I see that most of those topics that have been raised in the questions we have covered to some extent. So that wonderful story, Winfred, that you tell people, they ask you, what is the impact that we have when we support entrepreneurs to start trading across the borders? What's that story?
Yeah, for me, one of the stories that brings tears to my eye, and I think I'll touch on just two. One of them, I'll start off with a not so good one, is I took a company across to another country, and I'm not going to mention the company and the country. And what I think the mistakes business advisors do is sometimes we allow the client to dictate to us, and they tell you, take me across, and I'm going to give you a share of the profit or a share of my company. That's a very gray area, and you might not be so lucky because you wait and wait and wait. And I went across with a company that I waited and waited, and the profits were not coming. And later I found out that they were cooking the books. So that's not so good story. But the so good story is I took a group of businesses and potential investors across from South Africa. That was in 2015. And they went across to the country, and some of them ended up building hostels for students. Some of them ended up getting into getting subcontracts for malls. So those were success stories that I can really share. Yeah.
Great. So I'm not sure, if you noticed the question that stands out, or if you haven't, we can ask our CEO, Joseph, the one that stood out for him in terms of identifying who should be winning your book. So Winfred, if there's none, then we can ask Joseph. We'll go down the queue.
Let's give him the honor to.
JMT, which our attendees today has a point question that's worthy of winning the book?
Oh, that's a very difficult one. I think I think Lesego and Karel are the ones who can help us with that. You know.
Okay, so the stage is building up here.
Yeah.
Got one.
But the
height team.
Was that?
Yes.
You can speak, Lesego.
I personally am excited with a question that I believe deals with business advisors. And it's controversial enough for me to say that's a winning question. It is from Harry Guy. Harry Guy asked 3 questions. The first one is, what are the main characteristic differences, if any, that you have observed between entrepreneurs in Southern Africa, East Africa, West Africa, for example? Are these traits of any influence on how they start, grow, and sustain their businesses in and across Africa? I like that question because it hits to the core of business advising. Are you the right advisor to go into Africa? So for me, I think that's the big one. I like that question. It's got all the loaded questions that I think Winfred would be the right person to answer that one.
And which you'll find some of it in the book too. So this is will be your job to make sure that we get these people. And that I didn't get the name properly, by the way.
The name is Harikai. So I'm going to just send him a direct text and he must just email me.
Okay, that's admin@ibasa.org.za. And then Lesego will be in contact with you. By the time the book is available, you'll get your copy. Sorry to interrupt you there. It was a very important part of today's webinar, which is announcing the winner. We are moving towards wrapping up. So I'm going to, can we do it in sequence? So Carl and Lesego, we'll first go to you guys to just say, what is the impression that you got from today's webinar and the message that you carry forward or the insight that you carry forward? And then Winfred, if you don't mind sharing the same, before we allow our CEO, Joseph Chiwiwilo, to end the webinar for us. So, Lesego, you've been speaking, so let's keep going. What do you take forward from today's webinar?
Great, thank you so much. I've taken from this webinar 3 critical things: research, knowledge, and understanding. Without those elements, I don't think any business advisor would be effective in taking any business into the continent. So it's imperative that business advisors understand that the opportunity comes from research, knowledge, and understanding. That's my input. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And Carl, you? Carl, it looks like Carl's view is frozen, so he can't speak right now. But so let's move on to you, Winfred. If you could please share what you take a bit more than a sentence. What you take away from today's webinar and how business advisors can position themselves to be of service to their clients in reaching out to African countries.
What I've learned here today is the same questions that keeps coming up, it keeps cropping up in different African countries. Is where can we get information? Who can we partner with? How can we get our documents certified, or how can we get the right documents in place? These are questions that keeps coming up. And I think we should be having more of these discussions, so that we can, occasionally address some of these questions. And at least if we cannot do anything, at least point people to the right direction. Yeah.
Great, and thank you very much for your contribution. By the way, if any of the team would like contact with you, may they do so? And if so, how?
So if they want to follow me, I have a blog called @Africa Business Class. If they want to get in touch via email, is woamoako@gmail.com or Winfred, WINFRED @africabusinessclass.com.
I'm just typing in there. I hope I'm not making a typo.
Okay, so the email is
the chat that we have not correct and correct it for us, please.
Okay, the Gmail is window Oscar Apple Mango Oscar Apple Kilo Oscar @gmail.com.
Okay, so it's correct. In the chat, anyone wants to connect, and I'm sure they are many.
And then the other one is Winfred, as in window, India, November, Freddie, Ringo, Eco, Delta, yes, at africabusinessclass.com.
Okay, it is typed out in the chat area there, so Dennis can find it there and connect with you. But thank you very much again. It was really informative. I think we've touched on the surface, I think, and we must look at other opportunities to keep this discussion going and the sharing of information, and as you say, the networking too. So, Joseph, if I may ask you to end up, maybe can you just remind us as well in terms of, especially those of us that are in Gauteng, how we can make sure we keep our IBASA membership warm and connect with other people physically too. I know that the event there is very important for us specifically, but also in terms of the topic, sort of, and how we as a professional body, your impressions of today's webinar and how we as a professional body serve the needs of firstly of our members, of course, but through our members of small businesses that are in fact the reason why we are here.
May I take this opportunity to thank Winfred and our members, and even those who are not our members who joined us. And I see we still have 51 of them still listening, which is very important. It is how serious this information is. And indeed, as suggested by our speaker today, we are going to continue with this. So we are inviting members to make sure that you update your information at IBASA, because we are now starting with forums or district regional associations where you will be meeting regularly. And we are going to be inviting speakers like the speaker that we have today to come and address our members in their area, to grow their businesses, to start looking outside the country. And already we have mentioned that we had our members coming from as far as Ghana, Swaziland, and we would like them to keep in touch with the office so that we can start indeed contacting people in the area to try and have contacts in the area so that make it easy for our business advisor as they try to expand their businesses. And let me reiterate that this is our 20th year. We are celebrating 20 years as IBASA. So very soon you'll be receiving, update your information, you'll be receiving emails that will be informing you of all the activities that we have that are coming. And in June the 13th, please wait for the email, respond appropriately. We are going to be launching our Gauteng chapter of IBASA, and other jurisdictions you will be informed as they come along. And thank you again, our members. And indeed, we are, the following month, we are going to be looking at the services SETA, business advising, and also township and rural economy revitalization, project management and quality, and many other. So we will have speakers coming from services SETA who will be speaking of opportunities, especially for our members who are in training. We will have a speaker coming from the services SETA and other stakeholders that will help us to grow our businesses, and especially those who are in the industry of developing others. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you everyone for attending. We worked over 60 attendees at one point in time in the webinar, which was great. And I look forward to the next webinar. By the way, also, if you have topics that you are specifically wanting us to address, you should feel free to do so. You can send an email to admin@ibasa.org.za, and we will consider putting together a panel of people that can inform us about those topics too. So thank you again for the panel, and everyone that showed up today to empower yourselves. Remember to record this as part of your CPD if you are a IBASA member, because to maintain your grading as a professional IBASA member, you of course need to also show proof that you have been attending to your own development. So looking forward to see you guys next time around, and best of luck specifically in finding clients that are growing big enough to become traders across borders. See you all next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Winfred. Cheers.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye, man of God. Appreciate